Welcome back to part 5 of my developer overview on Treasure. Now today I wanted to talk to you about two closely related games, one very popular and the other not so much. The first of these is Yu Hakusho, and this was released in 1994 on the Mega Drive in Japan only. Now this is licensed from the popular Yu Hakusho anime and manga. And part of the reason we didn't really see these games in the West very much is in the mid-90s, anime and manga wasn't really as big of a thing in the West as it is now. And a lot of that had to do with the availability and that sort of thing. We really, as far as I remember, we had Dragon Ball Z for the boys and Sailor Moon for the girls. There really wasn't a whole lot else that was available for most people. The other reason that these games tended not to be released in the West is because most of them are pretty bad. You know, it's a tendency of licensed games. You sort of sell the game based on the license and not on the quality. Now add to that the fact that this is a 2D fighting game, which was a genre that was at its really peak of popularity in '94, and you would imagine that this has to be a terrible game. But is it? Well, let's find out. To start off, you have a pretty large selection of characters here and a unique character select screen. And most of your characters fall into the usual 2D fighting stereotypes. You have your larger, slower, but more powerful characters, all the way down to your faster, smaller, but less powerful characters. Up at the top you have your health bar, and you also have a little blue meter called your key meter that can be recharged by holding any of the attack buttons, and this meter allows you to perform your special attacks. Also at the end of every battle you have your usual snarky comment by whoever the winner was. The graphics in this game are pretty good for a Genesis game, and they kind of maintain that nice anime manga style. And also the sound is generally decent, although there is some sampled voice audio that's, you know, not all that great, kind of scratchy. If you played Street Fighter II on the Genesis, you probably know what I'm talking about. Another interesting aspect to the game, borrowed from the Fatal Fury series, is the ability to fight in multiple planes. You use the Y button to move back and forth between the front and rear planes, and I think this is an interesting feature that adds a little bit of, shall we say, depth to the game. Another thing that I really like about the game is that some of the backgrounds are actually dynamic. So for instance, in this one, as the sun rises and sets, the color scheme in the background changes. I think that's a nice little addition to the game. I should note that although this is based on the anime manga license, there isn't actually a storyline to it. Apparently everyone's just fighting because they want to, I guess. And to be honest, I actually prefer this over some sort of ridiculous storyline that they try to work into a fighting tournament. In addition to the single player mode, there's a 2 vs 2 mode as well as 1 vs 3 handicap mode, which can be a lot of fun. There's also various training modes, and depending on how you beat the game and on what difficulty level, you're rewarded with a different ending. Perhaps my favorite mode in the game is the tournament mode. And in this one you can actually fight as teams. Up to 4 people can play, and you can actually fight in pairs, or you can fight with a CPU partner. And what I think is really cool about this is you have the tournament, but even if you're playing single player and you lose the first round, you can even watch the rest of the tournament being fought by the computer, which I think is kind of an interesting feature. So although this wouldn't be my top choice for a 2D fighter on the Genesis, I still think it's worth checking out. The fighting mechanics are pretty solid, has a great art style, and some interesting features that should keep you busy for a while. So although Yu Hakusho was not exactly a life-changing experience, it did pave the way for what I think is one of Treasure's best games, and that is Guardian Heroes. Now, this was released in 1996 on the Sega Saturn, and I think it's one of the best reasons to own a Saturn, in fact. What they did essentially was they took the fighting mechanics from Yu Hakusho, refined them a bit, and then combined them with the 2D beat-em-up and the RPG genre to create a game that I think really everyone should play at some point. So let's take a closer look. So I thought I'd let you guys watch the intro here because I think Treasure did a really good job of setting the stage for this epic gaming adventure you're about to embark upon. There are 4 characters to choose from: Han, Randy, Nicole, and Ginjiro, and each has their own unique fighting style and magic attacks. The game is really a beat-em-up at heart, although the controls are those of a 2D fighter, taken directly from Yu Hakusho but a little bit more refined. This time there are 3 planes of movement rather than 2, and you can use the shoulder buttons or the Y button to move back and forth. You also have magic attacks which recharge, and you can see me using one right here. And in addition to each character's individual fighting style, they all have their own set of special moves. Fairly early in the game, you're introduced to the undead hero, who helps you along your journey and fights alongside you. You control the actions of the undead hero through the X button, as you can see here, and you can assign him to either attack the enemies or even defend one of your characters. Along the way, you meet various characters whose motives are not entirely clear, and depending on how you interpret them, you can choose your own path or choose where to go next, which I think is a really cool feature of this game. In addition to the branching pathways, at the end of some of the stages you get to level up your characters using points that you've earned based on your performance. Through this system you can either create an evenly balanced character, or you can choose to focus on one aspect or the other, either making a very strong character, very quick character, one with strong magic attacks, etc. I think this is a great system depending on your play style, and it also adds a lot of replay value to the game. In addition to the gameplay, the visuals and the soundtrack are really incredible. And one of the composers, Hideki Matsutake, was even a member of the Japanese electronic group Yellow Magic Orchestra. The game also includes a versus mode where you can play with up to 6 players, and in addition to the 4 characters available in story mode, you can also play as any of the characters or enemies that you faced in story mode. And they all have their own special attacks and magic attacks, which while are not in the manual, can be easily found online. There are multiple paths through the game, and each path has a different ending depending on whether you've chosen the easy, normal, or hard difficulty level. But even at the easy level, some of these later stages can have enemies that are quite difficult. So all in all, I really can't recommend this game highly enough. Treasure refined the fighting game mechanics from Yu Hakusho and put them into a story-driven beat-em-up that's really an experience not to be missed. In addition to the original Saturn release, this was also released for the Xbox Live Arcade, so there's really no reason to miss this one.